evening all, this is Jayla. This is my first audio project, my first speaking project that I'm doing on a topic I'm super hyper-fixated on right now, and that is a specific astrological placement of Lilith in Taurus in the first and third houses. I should note that I am not an astrologer. I simply have a fascination and interest in astrology, and I have since I was 14. And so a lot of things I've learned by reading and researching online or in books, and a lot of things I just picked up from being around others and experiencing different people and different archetypes in real life. So astrology as a hobby, studying astrology as a hobby, really satisfies my need to collect, categorize, experiment, and storytell. So today's audio project is on the astrological placement of Lilith in Taurus, specifically in the first and third houses. The two human subjects that I used for this placement, I used one male and one female. First house native is male, third house native is female. But before we get into the house-specific output and expression of Lilith and Taurus, I want to first explain and go over Lilith as an asteroid and Taurus as an entity and archetype on its own. First off, Black Moon Lilith is an asteroid, not a planet. We'll just refer to it as Lilith from here on out. Basically, Lilith deals with shame, ostracization, shadows, deficiencies, and ultimately it's like the hidden woman in you. And it's the one that you can't get rid of. It's like the bug that the programmer keeps overlooking. It is said that the asteroid is named Black Moon Lilith for the supposed first wife of Adam. While I'm not sure if this is an actual biblical story or if it is actually included in the Bible written for Christians or by Christians, I do know that the story goes Lilith is Adam's first wife, and she is sent away and exiled from the Garden of Eden because she is not seen as fit to be his female counterpart. She is defiant and she brings shame upon him, and she's basically just this rebellious woman that is a stain on the female race. Even the name Lilith is derived from Akkadian and Hebrew words meaning demon, spirit, female evil spirit, or night. Now that we've looked at Lilith a little bit, we can go to Taurus as an energy and entity on its own. So Taurus is number 2 in the zodiac wheel, across the wheel from Scorpio, which is number 8. I always say that Taurus is across the street from Scorpio, and they're both outwardly friendly neighbors to each other, but they quietly and secretly loathe each other in private, and they are the same because of it. Taurus to me is dark purple, iron, the bullhead, fertility, power, physical deaths, phallic and yonic imagery, purple oceans, black rocks. Sometimes it's associated with Satanism, definitely occult practice, sacrifice, female sorcery and domination, the uterus, earth, more as rocks and dirt and soil, flora and fauna, plants, animals, the human experience, all 5 senses, breathing in, climaxing, fluid creased in your neck, your womb contracting, pulsating, stretching and changing, and electrical charges like lightning during storms. I would also say that Taurus is representative of teenagehood. Since Aries is number 1 on the zodiac wheel, I see Aries as a toddler, a child, a kid, taking your first steps, being naive, innocent, playful, and foolhardy. So if Aries is 1, then Taurus to me is 2. It's the beast that comes when the child enters maturity. It's careless, clumsy, and reckless. Bull in the china shop, but it's angry, impassioned, and dead set on desire. It's the body flooded with new hormones that mimic street drugs. It's like the wood drums that are beat on during seances. After explaining Lilith and Taurus to you separately, energetically, as their own sovereign entities, you could see how when you combine the two, it turns really, really pretty, and they complement each other, and they're gorgeous together. This truly is one of my favorite placements because they strengthen each other when they're combined in the same bowl. One does not overpower the other. They support each other, and the flavors just intensify. Is that a word? Intensify. The flavors are intensified, yeah. And nothing gets canceled out, nothing is muted. And in astrological terms, the word would be debilitated. So this combination doesn't feel debilitating. I don't know whether or not it is considered debilitated or exalted in astrology, but for me personally, as just an individual, I feel like this placement is exaltation. It's beautiful. If Lilith and Taurus were to open a restaurant, some of the items that would be on the menu are water moccasin snakes, tide pools, water caves, moonlight, worn moss-eaten stone, and night swimming. Now that we've broken all of that down, we can look at Lilith and Taurus at work in our first house. So we're going to look at our male subject who has Lilith and Taurus in his first house. Just a real quick tiny review. The first house alone rules body, voice, frame, your birthday suit, your gaze, your teeth, mouth, mannerisms, ultimately your outward facing reputation, look, and physique. So for our first house, Lilith Taurus native, the first word that comes to mind is provocative. Even for a person who doesn't lean into it or is not overtly sexual, they're going to be kind of suggestive by nature, maybe without trying, or maybe others on the outside are going to project this onto them anyway. So provocative, facial features are extremely defined, tone of voice is defined. Everything, especially the nose, is going to be almost four-dimensional. It's bulbous, it's wide, it's prominent on their face. Their voices are another huge detail. For Taurian energy rules the throat and the voice and speaking. And so this native does have a deep and prominent voice, but even if they don't, it's going to be a defined feature on themselves. So it's going to be a gravel, pulled, or dragged out. Sometimes has like a croak or a hoarseness to it that's sort of akin to medicine or alcohol. It's got a bitter tartness to it, but it's not airy or screechy. It always has legs, and it always comes from below their stomach or at their stomach. Even third house natives also share this detail and this trait of the defined and noticeable or noticeably specific voice. So this is not just a first house native trait. So when there are similarities and there are shared traits between the two natives, I will note them. And this is one of them for sure. I like to say also that the voice is almost too big or too complex for their small human body. And so it's like their voice has so much dimension to it. It's getting filtered through this small humanness, and it's noticeable. With such a dark feminine, if you want to use those buzzwords, sorry for using them, but if you want to use the buzzwords dark feminine for this placement, in a male who has this placement, he's going to enhance his sex appeal through feminine detail, and it works for him. So long hair or a messy bedroom look, like the hollow, pensive eyes and naturally full pink flushed lips that are almost swollen, and an emphasis on these details, and also excessive adornment, jewelry, metals, precious metals, gems, stones and diamonds, wrists, neck, ears, even on the face. Even though piercings are considered Martian, excessive adornment with things that glitter and sparkle and shine is inherently more Venusian, more feminine in nature. Also, the immaculate ritual and habit of excessive adorning, excessive jewelry is something I would also assign to the third house native as well. So Lilith Taurus in first and third house are both going to practice or have a habit of practicing this bejeweling themselves all over their body. I also bring this up because the third house, amongst other things I won't get into yet, the third house is also considered the house of the goddess and ritual. And so that's important to include with a placement like this, because that is going to be seen in the way that they do adorn themselves and add sparkle and glimmer and glitter and jewels to their body. Another important detail I noticed in first house natives is that they will struggle oftentimes with feeling ashamed of their looks and wanting to hide or feel that they don't blend in physically with others, and they deal with rejecting themselves a lot until they do find it in themselves to radically accept and embrace their identity, their body, their face, voice, and entire blueprint, and their entire avatar. Then they have the ability to have an unshakable power in themselves that borders on like God complex, understandably so. A few more distinctions worth noting that especially show through in this male native that I chose are his lips are full, flush, and really plump, almost swollen. So I would say that blood flow is a distinct feature of a Taurian Lilith native, especially in the first house. Because Taurus is a phallic symbol and even a symbol of fertility, they're usually well endowed, but if not in the most obvious way, then in some other area or form. So even the full lips and big nose are evident of that. There's going to be an emphasis on beauty marks and moles. They tend to be extremely expressive in their face, so any facial expressions they pull tend to seem like they animate themselves, and they're ever changing and they're quick. It almost gives the illusion that they're sort of possessed by something non-human as quickly as their face and their expressions move and pull themselves. I would say if the native is not actually dark in skin tone and complexion, then they do have dark features. They have intense features. I also mentioned beauty marks and moles, but I need to overstate this because hickeys, scars, cuts, tattoos, bruises, they all look extraordinary on a native like this, because not only are bruises that deep purple and yellow color, but any other mark or distinction that's like a smattering on their face or body is elevating their look. It complements their avatar. I like to say if you have Lilith Taurus influence, and especially in houses 1 or 3, you bruise easily and you bruise well. They are like a body modification detail, something that looks pretty on you, and if you're lucky as a native, then you prefer a bruise and you love the way they look on your skin. As far as some mental or emotional habits go, I would say that they have a lot of hand-to-mouth fixations, so smoking and drinking or eating is prevalent. It's just there's a big emphasis on hand-to-mouth association, and deeply ingrained vices or habits, even if it's not something super detrimental like drugs or alcohol. It's still they're super susceptible to things getting dug in like a tick on them. I would say that every sensation is extreme for them. Either there's shame after touch, or there's a bad taste left in their mouth. Negative experiences linger and stay on them. There becomes proof and evidence of their mistakes written on them. They mar them, and they can settle at the base of their spine and circulate through their blood like a sort of poison. They become poisoned easily, and what's more, they poison themselves effortlessly. And then positive feelings and pleasure get them high, but they corrode them, and they keep them stuck just the same, repeating either way. This is something I saw in both first and third house natives. They are obsessive, compulsive, and addictive by nature. The placement is obsessive compulsive automatic, based on pleasure, on comfort, addiction, familiarity, and it's all encompassing. It presses and consumes, and like I said before, digs itself in deeper and draws blood like a tick. So to do a quick recap on our first house native, sex appeal is obviously really apparent and prevalent for them, as this feminine, dark feminine energy lies in their first house. They can bank off of that, and they can benefit from using it. They have it at their advantage. So whether or not this is a part of their brand, they can profit off of it and use it for attention, for money, for success in their career, or wherever they're trying to progress in societally. Because while they are seen as provocative or controversial, all press is good press. So them being a stain or being provocative in nature is actually going to benefit them if they use it correctly, if they know how to use it. Because attention is attention at the end of the day. You can profit off of any sort of attention, good or bad. Now we'll visit and get into third house natives and how this energy shows up for someone who has it living in their third house. And for this area, I use female subject. Now, they're not entirely two different experiences at all. There's just more emphasis on certain areas than someone who has it in their first house. But they share a lot of similarities, actually, as both the first and third house are outwardly facing houses. Like I mentioned before, the third house is the house of the goddess and the house of ritual, which also refers to daily habits, processes, communication, and mental processing. But the third house is also the house of your hometown, the community that surrounds you, whether by choice or by force. It is your peers and your classmates long after you've graduated junior high or high school. It's the grocery store that's down the street from your house. It's how you are perceived and your role and dynamic in this small community surrounded by others that you didn't really choose. Maybe you were born into it, sort of like siblings. Siblings are community that you're born into. So third house really is going to be prevalent if you have Lilith there at all, because it's going to show you where you are deficient, how you don't fit into this community, how you don't belong with the people that surround you, and how you feel like a prisoner in your own hometown. While being born with a Lilith Taurus influence in your first and third house has its perks, and no doubt you grow into it and you enter maturity and you realize how to work with this energy and utilize it for yourself and beautify yourself with it, especially if you are a woman. It is a challenging placement and it bogs you down, especially in your first years of life. Third house natives' big topic is their words and communication with the others around them, and those people's perception and conception of the third house native. So undoubtedly the third house native is going to have a huge effect with their words, both verbal and written. Their words always leave a mark and a lasting impact, whether that's for better or for worse. Their words, their tongue, their voice is their true weapon. Their words have the ability to entrance and hypnotize others. A lot of times, third house natives can feel the urge or the default to hide their thoughts and feelings and to remain quiet or silence themselves. In this way, they can be passive or elusive when communicating at all with others, whether this is intentional or not. They can definitely use silence as punishment a lot of times. I found that third house natives also can flirt by staying quiet, which means either they use minimal words or they don't use any words at all. If they're going to speak or try their hand at flirting verbally, then they don't use overtly suggestive language. It's just the way that they say something, their tone and inflection in their voice, and knowing when to shut up, basically, that pulls people in. Third house natives also are subject to people using their words against them a lot of times, and so that is also why they can by default go quiet or silent and feel that they don't want to speak and they don't want to reveal their true thoughts or feelings. That being said, both first and third house natives share the burden of being subject to being the social pariah or demonized, but conversely, this makes them naturally put on a pedestal, because when you demonize something, when you're afraid of it, or when you hate it, there's a very thin line between love and hate, and you are giving them power, glorification, and attention. Both natives can also have the reputation of quote-unquote women of the night, even if they are not sexually active, overactive, or promiscuous outwardly. They kind of get these perceptions projected onto them through very little action on their part. And so sometimes they can have this soiled, dirty, or improper reputation, but one that is tempting nonetheless, because a woman of the night is wrong to want, but so many people are still attracted to a woman of the night. I also already touched on extreme physical sensation, shame after touch, or extreme attachment to physical sensation, both negative and positive. And I believe also that these natives, both natives first and third, have this power or weakness of intoxicating themselves and others. So all five senses of theirs are on drugs. Sometimes it's too much. Others can experience intimidation or intense attraction to these placements, like the moth to the flame, and hence also why I used the comparison of women of the night and their other controversial reputation or associations. A lot of times these natives experience others having the desire to own, possess, or exploit them, or control them. People can react to these natives in an overcome, possessed way. And I don't mean isolated events of, someone being obsessed with you to an unhealthy extent. I mean, there's consistent patterns of weird behavior from others when interacting with strangers or people you don't know or peers on a regular basis. There's this need and want for outsiders that outsiders have to control or possess them, at the same time hate them. People want to photograph them, worship them, exhibit them, exploit them, or wear them as an accessory. sort of like snakeskin shoes or fur coats. They have this rare and hard to acquire flavor to them, but it's equally polarizing it to the negative extent. People will berate and criticize these individuals to no end, but they really just want to taste them at the end of the day. I use the term social pariah, but also there's parasocial relationships that these people experience, sort of like how celebrities are able to have stalkers or crazed fans. Obviously, these Lilith, Taurus, first and third house natives are not necessarily celebrities, but in their small circles or the places that they find themselves in are subject to parasocial experiences sometimes. People make them a symbol or a totem, and they become haunted by them without being around them. And they become less human in the eyes of others, and more of just like a totem or a figurehead or some representation of some repressed part of the outsiders. That is why they are so magnetic in a negative or positive way. I might have mentioned this already, but both third and first house natives' physique aspects are going to be their collarbones, neck, throat, arms, shoulders, hands, knuckles, and wrists. So all of these physical attributes of theirs are going to be prominent, defined, or stand out in some way. These are their like altar temple points on their body, their power points. They're like power zones, and they're going to attract more attention in these areas. And either they're going to be more beautiful and stand out that way, or maybe these are points of insecurity for the native. To just cap off, I wanted to say my favorite way to study astrological energies and the way that they manifest in people is through their synastry with others. So I'd love to see a first house native with this Lilith Taurus placement in a relationship with a third house Lilith Taurus native, because I love to see how they physically look and interact with each other. But since we are now basically done, I wanted to also end with a menu for if these two placements, man and woman, were in a relationship and were counterparts. So the conceptual menu for these two is Caribbean sugar islands, hoodoo, dragons, Khaleesi, excessive jewelry like hidden treasure chests, something like pirates have, cursed treasure, cursed stones, jewels and amulets, ties, cords and attachments, botched tattoos, piercings that didn't heal right, chains, water, night, ocean, purple, swamps, black teeth and lips, medicine, Calypso and Davy Jones, first boyfriend, bonds tied under waterfalls or a mother's house, lagoons, the chase, the waiting, the adrenaline, sleeping on the floor and bathing in the river, displays of power and challenging one another in the morning, secret cove, secret affair, hidden paradise portals, teenagehood, right after Aries and across the street from Scorpio, overdoing it through inexperience and carelessness, taboos, things that hurt so good, parasites, too much jewelry, too much mouth, never satiated, sharing gold and diamonds, taking other people's bikes off their front porch, and smoking 2 packs a day. Now that we're done, I just want to mention that I think it's so cool when these natives that I spoke about today also have their North Node in Taurus. And what North Node is basically is what you are projected to live up to or to utilize or follow in this lifetime. So it's like what you're aiming for, the energy you're aiming for, the energy that you're focusing on to reach your highest potential in this lifetime. So when these natives also have their North Node in Taurus, then their North Node and their Lilith sit together in this same energy, And it's almost telling the native, like, yes, you do need to use this, you do need to lean into it, and you do need to embrace it, because you can use it for your advantage, and you don't have to be so scared of it, and you don't have to be so ashamed. And so that's just a little detail I wanted to add in. I think it's super luxurious, and I think it's a super yummy placement to also have on top of the ones I spoke about, because it's just sort of echoing and also supporting these Lilith asteroid placements.